My name is Kirby Hansen, and you're watching Securely Connected. So, providing care to a kid who's got sensitive emotions, who's really easily dysregulated, who has a over-responsive sensory system, and their nervous system becomes dysregulated easily. This is a tough job. It's a tough place to be. It can be one of the loneliest places ever. And I've been intrigued by kids with big behavior since I realized that kids had big behavior sometimes. And I want to go back and talk a little bit about that. So, I don't know when I started really thinking the caregiver needs more support. It could have been my first year teaching in Des Moines. There was a kid I had who had some pretty intense behaviors, and he became dysregulated quite easily. And I remember one day, and if you're watching this video, I don't mean to shame you or put you out there, but this youth that was in my class, he disappeared out of my classroom, and I couldn't chase after him because we were on the second floor, and he left my classroom through the second floor window. I couldn't just chase after him. So I went down the stairs around the other side of the building. By then, he was gone. And I remember calling his mom, and she was really dysregulated. We couldn't find him, and she was upset, not at us, but at him. And she was so overwhelmed, and she was so unsure what to do. And she felt so stressed out. I felt really kind of bad for her. And I remember we were standing on the front steps of the school building, and she lit up a cigarette because she was so stressed out. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you can't do this. This is completely against the rules. But I couldn't tell her to stop. I'm like, I don't know how it feels to be her. This is really got to be hard. And a lot of the other people were equally compassionate, and I appreciated that. I worked with a really great group of staff, so I wasn't really worried too much about it. But over the course of my career, I've worked with a lot of people who I feel would have really shamed and blamed her and told her, you can't do that. No one told her that. But I just feel like that could have happened. And that's led me down a path of thinking about how do we best support caregivers. So throughout my teaching career, while I worked at Orchard Place, and as I've been a therapist all these years, I feel like many times, quite often, parents have said, I don't have anyone that really understands how it feels to raise my child. Or better yet, you're the first therapist who's really understood where I've come from and hasn't just assumed I'm doing all the things wrong. Or your ideas actually provide support, whereas other therapists have just told me things that I already have been doing. And this video hopefully gets at some specific guidance for what to do if you've tried everything. All right. Now, if you're raising a child with big emotions who has ADHD, anxiety, reaction sensitivity, or a nervous system that escalates quickly, there's something that I want you to know right now is I do not think we as humans were meant to do this alone. All right. And the reason caregiving can feel so exhausting right now is not because you're doing it wrong. It's because our civilized society caregivers are often trying to do village-sized jobs without an entire village. All right. Many caregivers I work with, say, am I giving in too much? Am I just letting him have his way? I keep hearing from my mother that I'm just being too soft on him, or I'm hearing from my husband, or I'm hearing from my wife, or I'm hearing from, this person says you just need to come down harder, just have firmer limits. Boy, back in the day, we would have just done, and a lot of those things just aren't going to work. And caregivers who are in this role are like, people, what you're suggesting wouldn't work. Thank you very much, but no thank you, And so, but parents really are wondering, caregivers really are wondering, am I too soft? Am I making things worse? Is it my fault that my child acts like this because I've been giving in too much? And they turn to social media, and social media will give them a whole bunch of ideas like, low demand parenting is great, or it's what you should do, or it's horrible and you shouldn't do this. Gentle parenting is like the thing we need to be getting better at, so we're connecting with our child better. And so we can co-regulate with them. Oh no, gentle parenting is the bane of our existence. It's what's caused everything to go bad. Don't do gentle parenting. Can you believe those people that want to be friends with their kids? This is what's wrong with our world. And there's all this going around that's just hard to filter out. Are you spoiling your child? I don't know. You might be. I'm not sure. It's just hard to know what to do when you're exhausted, totally exhausted and completely alone. Where is your village? So I see caregivers working incredibly hard to help their child whose nervous system needs more support than most kids' nervous systems need, and they're doing it without backup. So I want to introduce to you the idea of the elephant herd. There's a reason I keep having these elephants on my table here in my office, because I use them all the time as props as I'm explaining concepts or talking to parents about things. And it's nice to be able to say, here you are, here's your mother, and then when separated or whatever, it feels kind of like, oh, is there danger, lurking around the corner. Anyway, it's a great metaphor. The thing about raising elephants is they raise their young together. They raise their youth. The children stay, the small young elephants stay with their mother elephants for up to 6 years nursing, and then they slowly, might start to move away from the herd or whatnot. And so the elephants stay close to support them, to support each other, and the adolescent elephants, eventually gravitate towards the edge if they're a male with their new roles and so forth. But humans have evolved, in a similar way, but without this circle around them. At least in modern times, it's even getting more and more isolating. So how this matters for sensitive kids, for kids with sensitive nervous systems, with ADHD, with anxiety, trauma histories, autism, with PDA profiles, rejection sensitivity, regulation challenges, they need co-regulation to last longer. All right? Not because something's wrong with them, but because their brain needs more support while developing flexibility and independence. And when caregivers try to provide that level of support alone, they become exhausted. It also is a mother's natural instinct to regulate her young. So we shouldn't shame her for trying to make her kid feel better, right? I mean, come on now. So one of the hardest parts of parenting a sensitive child isn't the behavior necessarily. It might be, but it really could be the isolation. All right. Being the only person who truly understands your child, being the one who sees what triggers them, being the only one to stay calm when things escalate. Caregivers often are carrying decision fatigue. That's a real thing. They're always having to make decisions. Emotional fatigue. They've been dealing with judgments from others, and they fear that they're doing it wrong all at the same time. It's not a parenting failure. It's, just leaving it there is missing the problem. So, and I say this with some level of experience in my years of being a teacher and in my years of parenting children. I had some struggles where people really didn't understand what I was going through, and it felt very isolating and quite alone. And I felt quite alone. All right. Maybe not on the same level as some of the parents I'm working with. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I had an experience that was very isolating and lonely. And I know some of the people I'm working with now also have felt the same way. So let's talk about a couple of the concepts here. The first concept I want to talk about is accommodation. All right. Accommodation is a word that's used. It's called, you'll see it in the field referred to as family accommodation or parent or caregiver accommodation. And that is when the caregiver lowers expectations for their young, for their child, because they just want them to regulate. All right. And it comes sometimes with this connotation of shouldn't do that. Like just caving in when the child can't do it isn't really teaching the child how to learn how to get along in the world. And that actually is kind of true. When a parent or a caregiver uses accommodation, just to get by. It could be survival because they're just exhausted. And also left unchecked without awareness, it might just become a way of living, and that can become exhausting. All right. And what we really want to caution folks from letting happen, or what I see as being one of the more concerning things, is when the child becomes upset when the caregiver tries explaining the situation to others, and it becomes this secret the child wants to hold. And the problem with that is the parent kind of wants to hold the secret too, because they're feeling very isolated and kind of shamed by their support system. So they just don't want to talk about what's going on. Also, the caregiver doesn't. And so now we have this kind of secret. No one really knows what's going on. And the child may be gaining way too much control. The issue with that is children really don't want control. They will push on boundaries, especially when children have had like trauma histories and things like that, or if they're wired to be a little more sensitive. They push on boundaries to see where the limit is. And if someone doesn't set that limit, they're going to keep pushing because they feel safer when limits are firm and set. Now, the issue is set firm limits. Okay, well, that doesn't always work well because we're talking about kids with sensitive behavioral, regulation systems here. And so setting those limits really firm, we need to just be cautious with that because it could actually trigger some things to go a little bit worse. So kids do need limits, and they don't communicate that to us very clearly always. But how do we help the parent stop accommodating? Well, you can't just say stop accommodating. Stop lowering the bar for your kid all the time so that they just keep getting their way. Just let them play on their iPad all day long, all night long. Just who cares? That's not usually what. I've never met a caregiver who's just fine with that. If it's happening, they feel awful, like they're doing something wrong, like they're making it worse somehow by not holding their child accountable. But holding them accountable can become dangerous. Okay, so here's what I want caregivers to understand. Support is not the same thing as accommodation. Accommodation becomes a problem when it replaces growth. All right. So if you're in the situation where you're not helping your kid grow and learn to be more independent, then seek help. And this is the type of work I do at Secured Connections and Wellness. All right. I can help you with this. We can put things in place that will help you step away and allow your child to become more independent over time with some of these regulation needs that they have. All right. So support makes growth possible. In an elephant herd, calves are not expected to regulate independently right away. They regulate inside the relationship first, and humans need to do that too. The only thing is, elephants don't do it with just one mama elephant. There's all kinds of mama elephants so that they can take breaks, so they can help each other out, so that they can rest and be ready to come back and set those limits and be a good caregiver for their young individual once again. So here's where I've developed a new tool that I'd like to show you. Okay, it is called the caregiver circle. So the caregiver circle looks a bit like this. Caregivers, who do you have in your circle? At the top of the circle, you'll see there's core regulation supports. This could be your partner or a co-parent. It could be child's therapist or perhaps your own therapist. It could be your child's teacher, school support staff, your best friend, trusted family member. These are just ideas of folks to be thinking about, okay? These are core regulation supports for you and for your young person. Structural support, these are supports that help reduce, all of the things that you have to do. You're not completely alone. So school accommodations, IEP 504, medical providers, maybe your child has occupational therapy or some kind of other service that comes into the home or can come into the home, extended family, community programs. And then there are stability supports, faith-based community, respite providers, mentors, other supports like that. Other parents of sensitive kids, okay. And your friends who really understand your kid. Everybody's circle will look different. So I've got the worksheet that caregivers can fill out. There's the caregiver and their kid in the center. And then you'll see that they're left relatively blank because everyone's got a different set of support system in their life. So the first thing we want to do is evaluate, who do you have in your life? And are these people very supportive? And if they are, that's great. Let's keep them busy, all right? And if they're not that supportive, what can we do to help them become part of the repair crew? Now, I've got lots of visuals and things like that here that I can show you. The repair crew is we're working with kids all the time to help them regulate their emotions. So sometimes I have a lot of cards, and so we'll have things like lightning mode choice. This kid here is super impulsive, totally does things without thinking first, makes mistakes with their regulation, and can be kind of a handful sometimes. All right, and what we need to do is help build this youth's ability to become the smart choice maker. And so we might have some time we spend working on developing the youth's skill of delaying their need. This can be tricky, and so forth. And then eventually, once we've maybe helped build the reset walker, the kid who might step away and take a break without going off, we want to help them build that skill. We need to have them then work on the repair crew. Whenever there's a rupture in a relationship, we need to make a repair. The repair crew mode can look very different. So here at Secured Connections, like to individualize it. So here's one youth's individual repair card. And on it, it has things like the repair crew says they're sorry, fixes relationships, checks to see if people are okay, returns after the storm, right? Shows up when their body gets calm again, when their thinking returns, when connection feels important, it protects friendship, it protects family trust. It needs second chances, it needs time, and it needs someone to notice the repair. I've got other cards that are about the repair crew, and sometimes the repair crew involves additional people. If this caregiver is feeling particularly isolated, we have to stop that. This caregiver can't feel completely isolated. Who then can we pull into the circle? Not to shame and blame this child, but to also understand the dynamics of the situation so that the caregiver can have somebody that they can be like, wow, oh my gosh. And that person will actually be like, I know it's hard, what you're doing is rough, and I'm here to help you. What can I do? Rather than, well, you just need to spank his butt, because that's not really helpful. But it is the type of support that friends of caregivers are giving at times, from what I hear and what I've experienced in my own personal life. So we have to sort of train this repair crew to be involved. Now, this video here doesn't necessarily explain exactly how to do that, but be thinking about that. Do you need a repair crew to help your child regulate? And then as the caregiver, back to the video before this, the confidence map, can you go through these steps and actually help your child put their video game down without it turning into this big, huge, awful scene? We'll use these levels of regulation to take a step-by-step approach and match our response with their level of regulation, right? Okay, so that's that. The other thing that we want to do is be thinking about stretching our child's independence and the idea of accommodation. Are we just letting them get their way? If we are, and we're not pushing them, nudging them to be being more independent, then we need to maybe talk about that. So that is a concept that TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention, and some other concepts such as the nurtured heart will call lowering and raising the bar. People will say you're lowering the bar, you're lowering your expectations, you're just letting the child get away with things, and it's not quite that simplified. Now, if it is, then we need to kind of we can kind of rein it in, and I can help you do that. So lowering the bar means you're supporting your child, and it may look like accommodation. You may be making an accommodation, you may be reducing the demands on them for a little while, with the idea that when they are able, you're going to increase those expectations. We call that stretching so we can reach independence. So we've got supports like this that talk about support, stretch, and then work towards independence. And connection is always the goal. So that caregiver can help the child grow their ability to regulate themselves. It takes a village. And if we really want the caregiver to teach their child things about how to delay their emotional reactions, how to reset when going for a walk and come back and have things be better again, so that they can become a smart choice, a smart choice builder. That caregiver's got a lot of work to do, and that caregiver needs people in their circle of support. All right. So the goal isn't perfection. Caregivers don't have to do everything right, but they also shouldn't do it alone. And the goal is connection so that we can continue to recover. In the last video, we talked about the confidence path map, variety of them, knowing what level of response to have regarding the child's level of regulation and matching that up. But caregivers also need a confidence path map, right? That allows caregivers to respond differently depending upon which level the child's nervous system is in. And here's something just as important. Caregivers need their own confidence path map as well, because staying calm during level 3 and level 4 on these levels of regulation isn't always very easy, and it's something humans weren't designed to do alone. All right? It was designed to happen in a circle, inside of a herd, incorporating multiple relationships, tagging off when needed, and supporting when feeling exhausted. All right? So parenting sometimes feels lonely. It can be very overwhelming, and it can be heavier than you expect, and there's a reason. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because caregiving wasn't meant to be a solo job in the first place. All right? So children grow confidence inside connection, and caregivers grow confidence inside of support. So if you're raising a sensitive child who gets regulated really easily right now, one of the most important questions you can ask yourself isn't, how do I fix their behavior? It is, who is in my caregiving circle? Because nobody was meant to raise a child without a herd. So, as always, it's been a pleasure meeting with you. If you've liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and come back for more, because I've got a whole lot of stuff I've been working on that I can't wait to share with you. So thank you very much. My name is Kirby Hansen. This is Securely Connected, and we're out here at Secured Connections and Wellness. And I will look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.